Hello, Stillwater. Welcome to the Still Connect podcast, a podcast all about Stillwater, Oklahoma. I'm your host, Denver Evans, a born and raised Stillwater local and owner of Stillwater Digital Marketing. Each week, I'll be sitting down to have a friendly chat with local business owners and community leaders who help make Stillwater such a great place to live. So, whether you're a longtime resident or just a visitor, this is your place to stay plugged in, stay inspired, and still connect with the stories that shape our community. Also, this podcast is a real tour of Stillwater. So this is actually a mobile podcast that I record on location, usually in the business of the person I'm interviewing. So if you ever want to watch these interviews, you can watch the video version of this episode if you aren't already. So for this first episode, I had the chance to sit down with Steve Irby, founder of Kicker. After recording this episode, I knew that I wanted this to be the first episode. We talk a lot about the community, where it's been, where it is, and where it's going. I'm really excited, so let's jump straight into the episode. Steve, it's great to meet you.
Yeah, you too, Denver. Yeah.
I love your space. I'd actually never been in the building before. Growing up in Stillwater my whole life, I've always walked by it. I've been around Boomer Lake 1,000 times. I've always looked and thought, I bet it's really cool in there. Well, and it exceeded my expectations.
It may not have been here your whole life. But,
True. I do remember when it was being built, though.
Yeah, but it's the building was actually the first part was built in '68, so that was your whole life. But when we bought it. We moved in 2002, and we moved in about, completed this front part in 2008 and moved in. But we had operations before that, just warehousing in the back. But that's a big place. And was a printing facility.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, very nice.
Yeah.
So for people who don't know the whole Kicker story, would you like to share that with us? Maybe not the whole story, the Cliff Notes version. I did see the video on your website where you all went into a lot of detail. That's really great. People definitely check that out.
Yeah. Well, kind of the abridged version is that I got into building speakers in high school when I started playing in a rock and roll band and needed a little more volume. The drummer was playing too loud. So I went to my dad and wanted to buy a Fender Bandmaster speaker, which in those days was $300, and he about fell out of the chair, but said, is that something we could build? And I wasn't sure about that, but he found a book on loudspeaker enclosures. The drummer's dad had a 15-inch Altec Lansing speaker that he was going to use, but he loaned it to us. And so I bought a used amplifier, and we built a cabinet. And so that was kind of the beginning of my hobby, building speakers in 1965. And never thought it would be a business, but it was a lot of fun, and played my keyboard bass through it and shook the windows, and I think it was inspiring. I'd never built anything like that sounded like that or, was that powerful. And so it was a lot of fun, and I think that was the start. But I ended up going through school in sociology and got a degree in sociology and went on to grad school in sociology and realized, I guess, when I was almost finished that I didn't want to be a sociologist. You're going to school because you're kind of expected to, but didn't really have a life plan or anything. So that was the point where I realized I've got to make some decisions for myself as far as my future is concerned. I'm almost out of school, and after all these years, and so life's facing you, and do you really want to do it? And I remember sitting in class and thinking, I'd like to be building speakers. If I could be doing anything right now, what would I like to be doing? And I thought, I'd like to be building speakers. And the light bulb kind of came on that this was my life, and maybe I needed to make some decisions myself as to what I was going to do with it. And that just seemed to eliminate. So I went to the head of the department and said, I'm dropping out of grad school. And actually, I think the answers are not in sociology, but they're in religion. And I didn't really have a reason exactly for that, except that sociology seemed to be mostly theories and nothing attached that was real solid. I needed something solid in my life. And so immediately he told me about a guy at their church, said, why don't you meet with this guy? And so I said, yeah, why not? I didn't have any idea what he wanted to talk about. And he said, you need to accept Jesus as your personal savior. And I had hair about halfway down my back and playing in a rock and roll band. It was that was not really the first thing on my mind, although I had realized that I needed to make some serious decisions in life. And that was kind of where I was at. And so he challenged me with that. I said, well, I don't even know who he is. And I went to church, but I didn't pay attention. And so he challenged me to get a Bible and read it, which I did. And after a couple of years of that, I actually accepted Jesus as my Savior through just the reading of the Word. I go, okay, this makes sense to me. And my wife was not real interested. She said, that's fine for you. So I said, okay, but that's where I'm at. And through that time, I found another book in the Oklahoma State Library on loudspeakers and enclosures, which kind of explained everything I'd always wanted to know. I'd always got bits and pieces from magazine articles and books that I could find a little bit, but there was no internet. There was no way to find information on how to build a speaker, how sound really works, how speakers work. And I found this book, and it was everything almost from A to Z on how a speaker works, how sound works. It's written by a very, very smart guy in the 50s, but the principles were there. And as I was reading that, I just got inspired that this was really kind of my life's calling, was to build speakers. No real great explanation other than I just felt this is what I want to do. And so I told my roommate, who was also a grad school dropout, I said, listen, I want to start a speaker company. You want to go in with me? And he goes, yeah, why not? So that was a business plan. And that was 1973.
Yeah, that's great. I love hearing that. So what has it been like starting from basically the bottom, dropping out of grad school, all the way through we can go buy your product at Walmart or Best Buy right now?
Yeah. Well, it's just one day at a time. That's what it is. It's like most anything else. There haven't been, looking back, yes, there's been periods of breakthroughs that you can see better in hindsight. But at the time, it's just something happening and you're just doing it. And so probably I had $12,000 that I started with that I'd inherited from my grandparents. And I took that money and we bought a table saw and a panel saw and some plywood and routers and drills and all the things that we needed to build speaker enclosures, and started doing that in our garage. My roommate and I did, in a single car garage. And so really had no idea where we were going with it other than I had been building speakers for our band that we played in, and maybe some for some friends, but decided that we would build these and sell them to bands locally. And this was 1973, the Red Dirt music thing was kind of going on. Garth Brooks was here in town, and a lot of the guys that kind of started that movement. And there was a lot of interest in music, and there's a pretty big music scene. So, and of course I knew everybody because I was playing in a band too. So that was how we got started. And I never had an idea that it would go any further than just building musical PA systems and speakers for bands. And so that's pretty much what we did for almost the first 7 years. Very small shop on South Main Street, and got into, selling some raw speaker components that guys would use to build their own speakers. And eventually we picked up the PV line, which was musical instruments, PA systems, microphones, things like that to sell to bands. Mm-hmm. And, but lost money the first 3 years, lost all that money. The fourth year made a little bit. Thank goodness my wife was teaching school. We lived on her salary. Wow. For 7 years, and had 2 dogs in a van, and pretty simple life, Yeah. We were kind of free spirits, our friends were too. And so we didn't have any pressure to keep up with anybody because the people we hung out with were the same way. Yeah. And so in 1980, I really was making enough money to support us, and that's the year my wife quit working. My daughter was born that year. And a fairly significant year because a friend of mine that I'd been building speakers for while he was in college here started a music store in Canton, Oklahoma after he graduated, and called me up and said, I'd like a speaker that goes behind the seat in the pickup truck. There's a lot of guys working in the oil field. They've got money and they want good sound and they want bass. And could you design something? We'll go behind the seat. And so at that time, that's all I'd done for 7 years was read about speakers, design speakers, and sell a few, pretty much. So it was pretty easy. And I put something together and I sent it to him, and he called me back and said, you know what they call the speaker? And I go, no, what do they call it? I said, well, they love this thing, and they call it the ass kicker. I go, really? He goes, yeah, it kicks your butt right through this pickup seat. It went in a 2-door pickup, so it's right behind the seat, and the bass just came straight through. Right. And I knew it did because I tried it out myself.
Right.
But I was like, kind of like, oh, that's interesting, you know. Yeah. And he was all excited about it, and so he was wanting me to build more and more and more, and I sold them to him for $125, and he sold them to his customers for $250, and he could sell them as fast as we could build them.
Wow!
It was just, it was really phenomenal. There was nothing that sounded like that, and because I've been designing PA systems, so it was more like designed for more high performance than just a standard car system.
Right.
And so that's kind of how I got started in car audio. And he really convinced me to try to market them to some other car audio shops because he wanted me to keep building them for him.
Yeah.
So I think that, why I say 1980 was a fairly significant year. That's the first year I made enough money, not with Kicker, but just in the business to live on. And my daughter was born, my wife quit working. And so I was like the guy, you know.
Yeah.
And then this happened. So, but we were in the right place at the right time with the right product. And so, you know, I really thank the Lord for that. That was not my plan. I was really not interested in car audio. I thought it was kind of wimpy. They used small little speakers that kind of rattled. They didn't have any power. 18 watts was the maximum power they had. And our PA systems were like, you know, hundreds or 1,000 watts. And just a whole different ballgame.
Right.
So it was like a toy, you know, and I thought this will be the only thing I'll ever do in car audio. But because of the circumstances, there was amplifiers that were developed around that time that used switching power supplies that could put out more than 18 watts. They figured out how to overcome that off of a 12-volt battery. And so then they started putting in bigger speakers in cars because now you could power them.
Right.
And we had a product that nobody else had. And so that was the car audio market was just beginning to really kind of boom at that point in time. So we were right in the infancy stages of that. And that was, that was the start of Kicker. And it went on for a few months building these speakers, and then got a call and somebody said, well, it won't fit in a Corvette. So, okay, well, we'll change the shape of the box so it fits in the space behind the seat in the Corvette, but use the same components, just the same different shaped box. And that was the Kicker 2. So that was product number 2, which I never thought I'd do more than just one.
Yeah.
And then it just began to kind of snowball.
Yeah. That's incredible.
Yeah.
So you talk about being in the right place at the right time. You talk about Stillwater's music scene.
Yeah.
Take us back to the 70s. What was Stillwater like?
Well, the Strip was always there, but there was a lot of music going on down there, and different local bands, and they were bringing in some bigger names down there. At that time, I remember Ted Nugent came down and played down there, Leon Russell, just some people with some pretty big names back then. And of course, like I said, Garth Brooks was around. He would come into my shop quite a bit, but it was sort of interesting. He was playing more folk music, and we were rock and roll.
Oh, yeah.
And we didn't consider him a serious musician.
Oh, my goodness.
And he showed us.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, we were like wrong.
Yeah, I think we've heard his name a few times.
Yeah, but obviously he was a brilliant marketer too. So he put on a show, which back in those days, country music did not have a show.
Yeah.
They just sit there and play, and so he put on a show.
Yeah.
And he did what you did. That's some marketing.
I guess so.
He had some spice to the pizza,
Right.
And so very successful. Also, some of the other guys that used to come in that worked at the audiovisual lab would come in, Scott Hendricks, and now he's a big producer in Nashville. Okay. And but he was just setting up PA systems and video systems for OSU classes, and working at audiovisual.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of a interesting time, kind of a creative time. And also just coming out of the 60s, the music changed a lot. Music from when I was in high school, I graduated in 67, it was just beginning to really change from kind of bebop and maybe sort of bubblegum music to more serious, almost like folk protest music that turned into more rock music. But there was a Vietnam War was going on, so there was a lot of tension.
Yeah.
And so that changed the scene, I think, a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get the kind of the red dirt music, which is kind of back to the roots a little bit. We were not as aware in the 70s that red dirt music was much of anything, although a number of guys were playing it, Bob Childers and Chuck Dunlap and a bunch of people who would always come into my shop and would hang out. And they were playing more of this type of music. I was playing more rock and roll, so I was frankly not quite as aware of what was happening in that aspect. Mm-hmm. But there was a pretty big music scene going on. And of course, the college had not boomed. Boone Pickens had not boomed yet. And so, all that came later, all the big stadium and athletic village and everything that he was responsible for, that was not there. So, and Perkins Road when I was in high school was a gravel road.
Wow.
Yeah. We used to run track. They sent us out there to run track from the high school.
Perkins Road.
It was a gravel road.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, that side of the park was not developed at all.
Wow.
But I grew up in Stillwater, so I saw all of that. When we moved into our house my dad built in 1952, I was 4 years old, and Western was as far as the highway went. Going out west from Western, it was gravel, just a gravel road.
Wow.
Yeah, and there was no I-35. So if you wanted to go to Oklahoma City, you took 177. You went down south through Perkins and that way.
Was 33 there? Or did you have to keep going south through like Kearney?
No, 30, you went all the way down.
Okay.
Well, truthfully, I didn't go to Oklahoma City.
Okay.
In those days. I think the first time I went to Oklahoma City was with my dad, and we went on I-35. That was built in the early 60s. Mm-hmm. But I didn't go, but people that did, they'd probably take 33. I'm not sure how they got there.
I didn't know if it was 33, if you just had to keep going south.
You might have gone down to like Shawnee.
Yeah, Shawnee, yeah.
But if you wanted to go to Tulsa, you had to go through like Oilton. And I remember driving to Tulsa with my dad. It was so far that we stopped and had a piece of pie and coffee halfway there.
Yeah. Well, there's so many little towns, like, because 51, it's not the same.
Straight through.
Yeah, it didn't go straight
you
through.
were just winding around. Mm-hmm. And hardly anybody went to Tulsa because I think it was a good hour and a half drive or longer on these little windy roads, 2-lane roads.
Well, it's almost an hour and a half now, so I imagine it was even longer back then.
It probably was. I think I really only went there once with my dad. He had some kind of a job to look at, and but I remember it was a pretty good little trek.
So people
it was long enough we stopped for coffee and pie.
Yeah. So people didn't drive around like they do now. It's not, I'm going to take a day trip to Oklahoma City for leisure or anything like that.
No, nothing like that, because it was more of a hassle, to get there. I'm sure some people did, but it was all 2-lane roads too. So
well, and speed limits were 55 back then.
Mostly, like some were 65. It was always 55 at night.
Oh, okay.
They had day and night speed limits and stuff. And but not that much fun to go cruising. I mean, there's no interstate.
Yeah.
Interstate changed everything. Mm-hmm. But that went through the middle of my granddad's farm in Tonkawa. His best farm, I-35 went right through the middle of it.
Oh, wow.
He was not happy.
Yeah.
But that was a long time before the 70s, though.
Yeah, that's great. So tell me about your involvement with some things in Stillwater. I know you're involved with Block 34. I'd love to hear you talk about that a bit.
Well, I think the idea originally came to me before COVID. Jim Beckstrom is the president of the Stillwater Community Center Foundation, and they had been working on Block 34. There was a committee that spent actually years trying to decide what to do with it. They brought in a development firm to make proposals. I think the bottom line was there was no money, so nothing ever really got off the ground. And so he approached me about just helping to build a bandstand because he knew I was a musician and was interested in music. And how about if Kicker would help fund a bandstand so they could have concerts. Excuse me. And so we were on with that. It was not a huge project. And then COVID hit. And then everything just fell apart. And then we didn't really communicate about it because everything was crazy. And but during COVID, we were able to stay open because we're not a retail establishment. We're wholesale. So we don't have customers coming in. And because we're in wholesale distribution, we didn't have to close down. So we kept all our employees employed. And then when that was all over, the payroll protection plan sent us a ton of money. And I felt like we didn't really do anything for it, although we stayed in business. But I was thinking, like, what can we haven't ever really taken like a handout or anything from the city or something to help our business get started or run or anything. Mm-hmm. I wasn't really a big fan of that. Yeah. And so got started thinking about Block 34 and thinking, this is, the money that we've gotten for this could be sort of, in a way, instead of just giving it back to the government, you can sort of give it back to the people. Mm-hmm. Because it's really the money the government has all comes from taxes from the people. Right. Thinking, well, that kind of makes sense. It kind of set right with me. Excuse me. And so I called up Jim and we talked about it and said, I think, I'd like to use this money to help get this started. And as it turned out, it needed more money than that, but we had good business, really good business during COVID. So mm-hmm. we were willing to, kick in more to help get the thing going. And then we got Simmons Bank involved, part of it with the pavilion. And then we hired an architect who designed this building that we're in here on Boomer Lake that I knew was really good and pretty forward-thinking. And then he brought on a landscaping company called Allback Designs that had done a lot of landscaping for OSU, a lot of different things on the campus. And they're both OSU grads, which was kind of cool. Oh, yeah. And so we put together this plan and developed the whole plan for the whole block and presented it to the city and said, we'd like to donate this. And there wasn't much resistance. Right.
I imagine no one's going, well, I don't know. Let's think about this.
So that was city's been great to work with. Obviously we've got, our group and then the Community Center Foundation and the city. And, there's different groups having to work together, and kind of work through different issues. Well, what about this? If you guys do this, how will we do this? And this sort of thing. But they have been very cooperative. And I think the process has gone, we've had a few hitches. We've worked through them. And because everybody is really positive about this. So I just think it's a great project. And we're very excited about it. We're hoping to open by July and combine it with, and Jim Beckstrom, and the Community Center Foundation is involved in a arts festival called Dancing Turtle. Mm-hmm. And they've had it 2 years, and this will be the third year, combining the grand opening of Block 34 with the Dancing Turtle art festival. It's more than art. It's music, arts, theater. Yeah. It's like everything that has artistic, I guess you might say. Right. And so it looks like we're hoping that the completion will be, the project will be completed by the date. We pushed the date for Dancing Turtle out to end of July, which we weren't wanting to do it when it was so hot, but it looks like we're hoping that will all coincide. Yeah. And then the next year, we're hoping to make Dancing Turtle the big event for Block 34. That's great. A big yearly event. Maybe it'll be scooted backwards a little into June, But at any rate, it's the concept for me kind of took form in Boulder, Colorado. My son was living there, and we would go visit. And they have a downtown park. They have an amphitheater, and they have a farmers market that they set up on the weekends. Mm-hmm. And then they have vendors as well. Mm-hmm. And food vendors. So we would go down to that, and I just thought, man, this is such a relaxing, such a great community event. It would be great to have something like this in Stillwater. And so for me, after COVID, when we got some funding and we're thinking, what can we do? That just was on the forefront of my mind. If we could create that atmosphere for Stillwater to improve the quality of life, the people interacting together, and really more of a sense of community around Stillwater. Nothing wrong with OSU, but something that's for Stillwater itself.
Right. Stillwater can't just rely on.
Yeah, it's not just the university. This is the town itself. Yeah. So that was the concept, and I think we're pulling it off pretty well.
And I heard you all. Are you putting in or you've donated money for programming as well?
Yes. Yeah, for 10 years.
10 years.
Programming.
Wow.
And after that, somebody needs to step up. We'll see how it goes, But, so not big name acts.
Right.
But, regional and also a lot of local. We'd like to see local musicians playing there too. Mm-hmm. And but we're looking at Saturdays, and would like to have the farmers market going on Saturdays down there. We've got a space for that, or for any type of a market.
Right.
We've enlarged Duncan Street where they can pull in trailers. There's power bollards all around where they can plug in food trucks. Mm-hmm. We kind of have a beer garden. It's what we call it. It's picnic tables and trees on the east side, and food trucks can pull up there. So there's a lot of potential that can be developed on the block that maybe we don't even realize yet.
Right. Absolutely.
A lot of events and things that could happen.
That's great. Yeah. So when you say funding for 10 years of programming, is that like 10 years every week or two, or like how consistently throughout those 10 years, or is it a budget per year?
It's about $800,000 for the whole time.
Okay.
So you divide that by 10, that's what, 80,000 a year.
Yeah.
And then hopefully something every week split up, that maybe some bigger packs and then some smaller. So that's going to really be up to the community center as to kind of how they want to do that.
Yeah.
And I'm not that particular about it. I just want to see things happening on the block. Yeah. And I know when you build it, they don't necessarily come. You need to have some programming.
Yeah. Well, and we already have some things like I talked to Bobby at District Bicycles the other day, and he said, he's like, I'm really excited for this space. Hopefully that could be something that, Mid-South uses, another stage or something like that. And being able to put their vendors down there instead of taking up so much street space, and just being able to, I love the way that we're expanding west from downtown. Because obviously we can't expand east. Otherwise we're going to be in the city's building. But we've expanded. A lot of things have expanded down to 10th Street, where the roundabout is. Hatch, Roundhouse Bakery, Good Little Eater, Empire, Stone Cloud, all those things are now kind of moving us to the east. And
that's a more, it's older. You call it a historic section, because that's really where Stillwater started, was down in that area. You look at some of those buildings are like really old and have been there for a long time. And I think it's got some character to it. It's not a strip mall. It's not like a manufactured thing. There's some authenticity, to that area that I think is pretty cool. And then, I look at Block 34 as a catalyst, for a lot of different things that can happen on it, and business development around Block 34. And I don't have a crystal ball to know exactly what's all going to happen, but I know that you put something like that in, things will begin to happen. And it'll be fun to see.
Right. It's going to make businesses want to open near that, around that, have events out there.
Yeah. I think so. I think it'll increase the property values,
Well, and I think even just some of the things that we already have downtown where we do have to block the streets off. We're going to increase, or if those events can happen in a different space, then we don't have to cut the streets off. We maintain the parking for those types of events, and people just have to walk one block over.
Duncan Street, actually, from 8th to 9th, can be totally blocked off. The city's approved that.
Okay.
And we've made it wider. It's being totally redone. So it's wide enough that you can have a complete event on Duncan Street there and bring in trailers or tents and have an aisle down the middle.
Yeah.
And so it's really multi-purpose.
That's really great.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And there's parking all the way around the block too.
Okay.
And so
I get excited every time I drive by.
it's nice to see something coming out of the ground. There was a lot of work to get out of the ground. There's a lot under the ground that you don't see there.
Right.
A lot of issues with drainage. There's a 6-foot slope from 8th to 9th. And a lot of drainage, water retention, underground areas. And they had to put in a whole sewer system from that area all the way down to 12th to drain Duncan so it doesn't flood like it always does.
Yeah.
And so the city stepped up and rebuilt 8th Street and Duncan. And so, and then, of course, all of the electrical and everything that's underground that you'll never see. It took them a while to get all that done. And they found a well, an old well on the property. I'm not sure if it's a well or a cistern, but it's like 15 feet across and like really deep.
That thing must be old.
It was very old.
Yeah.
And it's like stone, lined with stone. And,
Yeah.
And there's water down at the bottom of it.
Wow.
They pulled the rocks out of it. I guess they just dumped rocks in it. But determined it wasn't a historical. It might have just been a cistern and not actually a well. They couldn't determine exactly. There was a church there at one time, possibly. A lot of stuff been on that block. Mm-hmm. Even a livery stable was there, and they found old horseshoes and things. So Jim Beckstrom was really picky about them, finding artifacts on that property because it's been there the property's been there a long time.
Yeah.
But, there have been commercial businesses on that property for, over 100 years.
So what are they doing with all those old artifacts? Are those going to make their way over to the Stillwater History Museum, or they just holding on to them?
Well, mostly horseshoes.
Yeah.
I don't know what he did with them.
Yeah.
But they ended up covering up the cistern. They determined it's not really of historical value because we had the Oklahoma Historical Society come in and examine it and everything. But that might have kind of delayed the project if it was.
Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine.
I don't know what we would have done.
I don't know.
Because it's there.
Right.
But it's anyway. Yeah, just some horseshoes and some just junk, it's buried and, things from times past.
Yeah. Makes you wonder what's everywhere else all around town.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. That's what happens over the years. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah. So we haven't had livery stables and.
No, we didn't have. That's
basically centuries now.
That's been a while back, but like I said, that end of Stillwater is very old, much older than the northern part, and so
it's nice to seeing some of the houses that have been bought around there and restored.
Yeah,
some of those really really old ones.
Yeah,
early 1900s houses.
Yeah, some of them can be restored and. Some of them need to be torn down. Some
of them have been college houses for about 100 years.
Yeah. Right. Some of those are pretty well done.
Yeah.
But, we started our business in that area actually at 1212 South Main, which is about 12th and Main, down there. So we rented that little house and we're there. And then the Quonset hut next door to it ended up buying both of those. But I was there for 17 years on South Main Street down there.
Wow.
And the house that we were in was built, I think, in the 20s or 30s, because we had our wood shop in it, and we had a little retail store, did some remodeling. We found like newspapers in the walls, and that lath and plaster stuff, and the foundation under that house was actually just rocks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the floor was like bouncing, and so we got into there, but we just had rocks holding it up. It was like, this is really primitive. The house is still there, still standing. But, it's an old part of town.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So what are some other things about Stillwater that you've enjoyed just seeing change over the years, things you've seen come in over the years, other future projects you're excited about?
Well, I talk to a lot of college students that really love Stillwater and would like to stay here, but there's no jobs. And so I think one of the things that I focused on is, of course, keeping this business in Stillwater and being able to provide jobs here. And so it's always encouraging to me to see companies move here that hire people. Not that we want the town to just explode, because I think the small town atmosphere has some charm to it and some things we don't want to lose, but we can certainly stand to have more and job opportunities. Mm-hmm. And so, we've seen things come and go, and but if we can, keep them coming, I'm always interested in entrepreneurs that start businesses here. Somebody like me, someone else that's more homegrown. Right. They don't have a tendency to want to pick up and move, and they're going to be here. And so we do need an economic base. Stillwater has primarily been an education-based community, not an industrial-based or agricultural-based community. And obviously, you've got 7,000 or 8,000 people employed. That's the biggest employer in town.
Right.
And so I would like to see that more diversified. But we love having the university here. I think it adds a kind of a cosmopolitan flair, kind of an international flair to a small town in Oklahoma that you wouldn't have. And so I think that's one of the things that makes it really special. And we're isolated, kind of in a good way. We don't have suburbs, and we're not sprawling so much. And if you want to go to Oklahoma City or Tulsa, you can be there in just a little over an hour. But there's green grass in between. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're a little bit of a oasis here. I think that we kind of have our own world, which is really nice. And I think just want to improve the lifestyle here and possibly make more job opportunities so people can stay here. Yeah. And that excites me to see that happen.
Yeah, I like seeing how much business owners and entrepreneurs like you are reinvesting into the older parts of town, kind of like we talked about with Block 34, because we're trying to keep the core of our city constantly getting better, right, while avoiding that sprawl.
Yeah. Well, Corey Williams has been very active in buying businesses. In fact, the business at Stone Cloud's here. My son owns Stone Cloud, and I think maybe you know that. Oh, yeah. But Corey bought the building and remodeled it to suit him, and then he leases it from him. Mm-hmm. Same with Empire. Yeah. And I think he may have gotten the one across the street that has the antique shop in it, Did Hatch. And he's like, we need people like that are interested and have the kind of the wherewithal to not only buy up these old places, but then to see that they get good tenants and make a business proposition out of it. And so that's, I think we're fortunate to have people like that. You kind of need people with all sorts of skills and things, but if they're interested in developing Stillwater, they can all play a role in doing that, making the quality of life here better to where you don't feel like there's nothing to do in Stillwater. We need to go to Oklahoma City or Tulsa. Yeah. Which is okay, every once in a while. But I think we're pretty excited about the McKnight Center here. Yeah, and it's big. So we have season tickets to that, and we really enjoy being able to go to those performances. And because we used to go to the Civic Center in Oklahoma City or the PAC in Tulsa, right, to see different things. We don't do that anymore. Mm-hmm. And it's nice to be home in 10 minutes.
It is nice to be home in 10 minutes. Yeah, they've had some really big names. Yeah. I really liked it when Garth Brooks came back.
I didn't see Garth when he was here.
Oh, yeah.
But we saw Vince Gill. We've seen a lot of them. I can't remember why we didn't see Garth. But yeah, but there's really a wide variety of entertainment. So kind of something for everybody. And but things like that I think are pretty exciting. It makes Stillwater, puts it on the map.
Yeah, because where else do you have a town of 50,000 people that offers what Stillwater offers? Yeah. I was talking to somebody else, I think it may have been Bobby, but who said Stillwater's really punching above our weight right now. Yeah. When it comes to what we offer relative to our town size.
Yeah, absolutely.
City size.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Now, if we can get a Target, we'll be there. We'll have arrived. Yeah. That's what my wife says. But
yeah. Do you know anything about the rumors of people talking about Target like over the years?
It's always like you got to hit 50,000. It seemed like we've been like 49 something.
Yeah. Well, I heard a rumor, and this was way back in the day, was that Target was heard that they, or basically did research, found that 9 months out of the year it would be good. But then over the summers, it would be
Well,
difficult to sustain. But
Sure.
and then I also heard that Walmart, when we only had the one location, Target was looking at adding, and then Walmart opens a second super center, and then Target bails. But who knows? Who knows what the truth on those things are?
there's
But
probably some truth in it, and
Yeah.
there's definitely some truth that if you want to have a business in Stillwater, like a retail business, you've got to plan for the down months when the
Right.
students are gone.
yeah,
So you can't just expect every month to be the same. You have to kind of balance it out in your books. You kind of
yeah,
save a little bit extra. Because that's just what it is. And it's always been that way. Yeah.
yeah. It's hard, and I know a lot of people are worried about now that we don't have Bedlam. We don't have as many. That not only is that a
Right.
huge one, but what the games that we are having to replace that with, we're not able to get a school with that big of a rivalry,
Yes.
that close to where those fans are going to come to Stillwater, who are familiar enough with Stillwater to go around to the local shops.
Yeah.
And then, and so now our downtown activity, all of our other local shopping activity
Yeah.
is significantly diminished.
Yeah. Everything affects everything else,
Yeah.
and obviously football affects everything else.
Yeah.
But but things change over time.
Absolutely.
So maybe rough for a little bit, and then you never know exactly what's going to happen. You
Right.
know? But that definitely affects it. I'm sure that affects the tourism industry and all of that. But
And I think that having Block 34 is going to bring so many more people to our downtown area that hopefully it kind of balances that out, especially with all that programming.
that's what we're hoping that will make a difference. And maybe people, of course, they're not as focused on football right now anyway. But maybe they'll focus on some other things.
Yeah.
Of course, football is important, but there is other things, and there's always ups and downs. I mean, whether it's business or cities, or you've always got your ups and you got your downs, and so you just persevere, through those things and keep going. And generally, things happen a lot of times that you didn't expect, and so that's kind of one thing I've seen is that you go, oh, I know what's going to happen now, and well, maybe it did a little bit, but then it doesn't go on. We thought COVID was going to be terrible, going to be like the recession of 08, 09, where we lost 30% of our business in a year.
Right.
And we cut all our orders and just for about 2 weeks, and then we started just getting these massive orders in. We go, oh, it's not going that way. And so
Kind of goes the opposite.
we had to call up our
sometimes.
factories and say, okay, no, build more. Yeah, what we said 2 weeks ago, forget that. And it turned out to be by far the biggest couple of years of sales we've ever had.
Wow.
Just eclipsed everything else.
Yeah.
And all this stuff happened, and we could not have seen that coming.
Well, that's great. And again, like you said, you can't see it coming because then it was because of that you didn't have to use any of that money.
Yes.
You get to reinvest that into the community.
Right.
And now
It all
Block 34 is happening.
Right. Yeah, and we didn't have to use that money because we had a good year.
Yeah.
Had a
Yeah.
year and a half. It was great. And so, you just don't know. It's easy to sit back and say, oh, things are going downhill. But truth is, you really don't know what's going to happen in the future. So you need to keep going, keep positive, keep just doing what you're doing, do it as best you can. And, I think this, we've got the data center coming in out here. I don't know, that's going to hire some people. But then there's a company that bought, it was, I keep thinking it's Swan Rubber, but it was Armstrong.
Oh,
the building
yeah.
has been two different things.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking it was like a Dutch company or something. I'm not sure what they're going to do. But, and then they've got the investment in the kind of amusement.
The hub.
The hub thing,
Yeah.
with the movie theaters and all that stuff going on. And just, things happen. So I'm very positive about the future for Stillwater. We may have some ups and downs, but everybody else does too.
Yeah.
So that's just part of it. But we've got a really good thing going here. So happy to be able to contribute some to it.
Absolutely. One last question.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone who's starting a business in Stillwater or thinking about starting a business in Stillwater?
The only advice that I can really give is based on my own experience. So I think it's better to start small than to try to start too big. I tried to pretty much stay out of debt, which I did for 7-8 years when I first started, but I started like so small, But we also had an income from my wife, and so starting a business, you don't want to bite off more than you can chew. And so I think you need to just, if you have an income, you need to secure an income that you can live on somehow. Otherwise, what are you going to live on? I mean, that's common sense.
Right.
But, it's not all that common. You think, well, I'm going to start a business, I'll live off of it. Probably not. Probably not. That's going to be, it's really hard to get a business up and running to where you can actually live on it, because it takes investment and lots of different things. But, so I would say don't start too big and look at every situation that you encounter as a learning experience rather than a setback, and learn from those times, and keep moving forward. Don't give up. I think my mantra is passion. You got to like what you do. I mean, I think that's key. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you better like it, because it's going to be easy. Then perseverance, hang in there, because whether you like it or not, it's going to be some really hard stuff come your way, because everybody has that. It's not unique to you. And then the last one is prayer. As a Christian, I think, or anybody, you're going to run into situations where there's no answer. It's staring you in the face. There's no answer. And that's pretty scary. And so to me, that's where, you just ask God for help. I mean, I think it's just about that simple. And then you persevere. Then you keep going. And, unless they kick you out of your building, well, you're still there. So I've been through that many, many times, and come out on the other side of the brick wall and you go, wow, we're still here. I'm not sure how that worked, but we're still here. We're still going. And 51 years in business, and been through that, especially in the early years, a lot of time. So passion, perseverance, and prayer to me. But those are the three inward ingredients that you need. There's some more to that, but if you don't have those, well, you'll probably get discouraged.
Well, thank you so much for your time. It's been a great conversation.
You bet, Denver.
All right, guys, thanks for tuning in to Still Connect. I really hope you enjoyed that conversation with Steve. And there's always more where that came from. So if you loved today's episode, don't forget to follow on social media to stay in the loop, as well as share this podcast with all of your Stillwater folks so we can grow the podcast, these conversations, and ultimately our community. If you want to go a step further and help bring these stories to life, consider supporting the podcast on Patreon at patreon.com/stillconnectpodcast, where you can get early access to episodes, a peek behind the curtain at the podcast process, and a shout out on an episode for as little as $5 a month. With our higher level tiers, you can get access to things like patron only polls, special requests for the show, access to online Q&As, and in-person hangouts with me and your fellow patrons. No matter what your capacity for supporting the podcast is, every little bit helps grow this amazing community. And we all need community. So even when life gets busy, make sure you still connect.